In a city soaked in secrets and blood, Evelyn Drake has lost everything to a power she cannot see, yet refuses to hide from. When those she trusts most fall to betrayal, one woman will turn the darkness into her greatest weapon, vowing that the whispers in the shadows will become a reckoning no one escapes. Before we dive into the story, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. So let's get started. The city breathed in fog and neon, a suffocating mix of decay and ambition. Evelyn Drake's footsteps echoed down the narrow alley, her breath sharp against the biting cold of night. The files in her backpack felt like a loaded weight, a powder keg of secrets that could ignite everything around her. Just hours ago, her life had fractured in a way she never imagined possible. Thomas, her brother and mentor, was dead. An accident, they said, a careless driver's fault, but Evelyn knew better. The bruise beneath his eye, the hurried phone call he made the night before, the shadows lurking behind friendly faces, everything whispered a darker truth. She had been closing in on Marcus Gray, a man whose influence clawed deep under the city's skin, a man powerful enough to smother lives without a trace, who turned smiles into weapons and allies into enemies with the flick of a wrist. Thomas had been her guide in uncovering the truth, his notes and sources, the breadcrumbs to a labyrinthine corruption network. But once he'd taken that fall, the walls around Evelyn began to close in. Her phone buzzed a message from an unknown number. "Stop now, or you're next." She swallowed the lump rising in her throat. Stopping wasn't an option. Not now. Evelyn slipped into a rundown cafe, the stale air awake with murmurs and cigarette smoke. She scanned the room, half-empty chairs, shadows hugging every corner. Somewhere among these forgotten souls would be someone willing to help or at least listen. Across the table sat Marcus Gray's men faceless puppets, bearing polite smiles that never reached their eyes. Evelyn's pulse raced faster as one of them casually passed by. Their intentions were clear: to warn, intimidate, or silence her. She knew she was marked. The city's underworld had already begun its hunt, but Evelyn's resolve hardened like fractured glass reflecting her pain. Yet resistant to breaking further, this city had swallowed her whole, but it hadn't consumed her. Not yet. In that moment, Evelyn Drake embraced the darkness creeping into her soul, for it was only through the shadows that light would find its way back. The city's night had no mercy. Its streets twisted like serpents, hiding predators behind every flickering lamppost and crumbling brick wall. Evelyn moved like a ghost through the maze, every shadow a potential enemy, every passerby a possible threat. Her sanctuary was gone shattered with Thomas's breath, and everything she had once trusted had turned to ash. But beyond despair, something fierce kindled within her, the ferocity of survival, the raw edge of a soul stripped bare. Downtown's neon flickered above battered storefronts and forgotten alleyways where deals were made in whispers, and blood was the only language understood. Here Evelyn sought refuge among the lost and the damned, the informants, the outcasts, the ones who knew the city's darkest secrets because they had nowhere else to hide. In a smoky back room beneath a rundown bar named The Hollow, she met Cade, a former mercenary with eyes sharper than knives and a past even darker than the city's heart. His loyalty was bought with honest currency, truth, and fire. With him, Evelyn began assembling a fragile alliance. Every step forward pulled her deeper into a world where trust was a currency scarcer than gold. Betrayal was a shadow that danced just behind her, waiting for a moment's weakness. Days turned into nights, and Evelyn trained herself in the harsh lessons of the streets, not with weapons at first, but with patience, cunning, and cold calculation. Yet beneath it all simmered a growing hunger, not only to survive, but to make Marcus Grey pay for every scar he had carved into her life. The abyss she had fallen into was dark, but it was also where her revenge would be forged. Evelyn's eyes had hardened, reflecting the cold grit of a city that taught its lessons in pain. She no longer feared the night. She embraced it, learning its rhythms and its ruthlessness. Under Cade's grim tutelage, she became more than a hunted woman. She became a hunter herself. The streets taught her to move silent and swift, to read the flickers of fear and deception that masked every lie. Her first strike was small but deliberate. A courier, twisted in allegiance to Grey, was found with a message pinned to his coat, a whisper of Evelyn's rising shadow. It wasn't just survival anymore, it was war. Rumors ignited in back alleys and forgotten docks. Whispered warnings passed like wildfire. Evelyn's name was a blade slicing through Grey's empire, drawing blood from his carefully woven network of lies. But with every move, the stakes grew higher. Grey's reach was long, his wrath swift and merciless. Evelyn watched friends fall into traps, betrayals revealed like sharpened daggers in the night. She learned to guard not just her body, but her trust. Each confrontation burned a scar into her soul, but also forged her will. The woman who had once sought only truth now sought justice, with teeth bared and shadows at her command. The hunt had truly begun, and no prey could outrun the darkness Evelyn had become. The deeper Evelyn wove herself into Marcus Grey's world, the more twisted the threads became. What had once seemed like a straightforward battle between the hunted and the hunter dissolved into a labyrinth of lies, betrayals, and hidden faces. Trust was a luxury Evelyn could no longer afford. Allies whispered secrets with trembling lips, hesitant eyes darting toward every shadow. The more she uncovered, the clearer it became. The rot was not just in Grey's empire, but within her own circle. Her closest confidant, a voice of comfort since Thomas's death, vanished without a trace. Messages from untraceable numbers taunted her, suggesting a traitor walked beside her, feeding Grey's darkness her every move. Every truth uncovered revealed another mask, every mask a new enemy. Memories twisted with suspicion as Evelyn grappled with the stinging realization that she was alone in the abyss after all. Yet even in isolation, her resolve hardened. The shattered trust was a crucible shaping her into steel. The hunt was no longer just for revenge. It was for the ultimate truth, no matter how vile. The web tightened, and Evelyn knew the final hunt was drawing near. But only those who survived the shadows could strike a fatal blow. The city never demanded anything without exacting its price. Evelyn had learned this lesson the hardest way possible. The deeper she sank into Grey's world, the heavier the weight of her choices became, each step forward stained with blood and broken bonds. She watched as friends turned to foes, as promises dissolved into ashes of betrayal. Every secret shared came with a cost. Every act of vengeance demanded a sacrifice. Yet Evelyn knew that without paying that price, the scales of justice would never tip. Her hands shook once, recalling the night she buried a friend whose loyalty wasn't enough to save her. The memory was a wound that refused to heal, but such pain forged a cold determination, a reminder that in this game only the strongest survived. Marcus Grey's empire began to crumble under the pressure of Evelyn's relentless assault. Puppets fell, alliances splintered, and whispers of rebellion stirred in the darkest corners of the city. Yet for every victory, Evelyn's humanity frayed a little more. The mirror reflected a woman scarred by rage and loss, a hunter who had become what she once hunted. But there was no turning back. Her path was set in blood, and she would walk it to the end, no matter the cost. Night was no longer just darkness. It was a mirror showing Evelyn the ghost she could never outrun. Faces from her past haunted every step. Thomas's warm smile, the promises broken, the moments lost to betrayal and loss. Haunted by memories, she felt the weight of every choice she'd made, every life touched and broken in her quest for retribution. The line between hunter and hunted blurred, and sometimes she wondered if the monster she fought was not Marcus Gray, but herself. The shadows whispered truths she had long buried, forcing her to confront the depths of her pain and rage. But even as the past clawed at her sanity, Evelyn drew strength from it. Those ghosts were her fuel, the fire that would burn away lies and destroy the empire built on them. In the cold silence of abandoned rooftops and forgotten rooms, Evelyn faced herself, fractured, haunted, and unyielding. The past was not a chain, but a weapon, and she wielded it with deadly precision. No one escapes their history untouched, but Evelyn Drake was determined to make sure that history tore down everything Marcus Gray had built. Evelyn's strikes had begun to fracture Marcus Gray's empire in ways no one had imagined possible. The underground networks trembled as whispers of rebellion spread like wildfire, fueled by the woman who refused to be broken. She had become a symbol, a shadow that disrupted the delicate balance of power. Gray's men, once confident and ruthless, faltered under her calculated assaults, their loyalty shaken by fear and doubt. But victory came with a cost. Bonds forged in fire were tested, and Evelyn learned that breaking the chains of an empire meant facing not only external enemies, but the demons within. Each victory brought new challenges, old friends turning away, new foes arising from the cracks of the fallen regime. Yet Evelyn's will was unyielding, steeled by loss and sharpened by necessity. She was no longer just a woman seeking justice. She was a force of nature, a reckoning wrapped in shadows. The city shifted beneath her feet, and the winds of change whispered that the final battle was drawing near. The battlefield was no longer just the city streets. It was a war of whispers, shadows, and sudden violence. Evelyn found herself caught in the crossfire of alliances breaking and loyalty shifting like sand beneath her boots. Gray's retaliation came swift and brutal. Ambushes in tight alleys, traps laid in once safe sanctuaries, and murmurs of betrayal from those she once called allies. Every moment was a fight not only for survival, but for the fragile spark of hope that kept her moving forward. The scars on her body told the story of encounters that came too close, the brush with death a constant companion. Yet with every narrow escape, Evelyn's resolve only deepened. In this crucible of fire and shadow, she discovered that the true cost of vengeance was loneliness, the cold, bitter solitude of a soul forged in torment. But loneliness had a price she was willing to pay. As the city tilted toward chaos, Evelyn readied herself for the inevitable final confrontation, knowing that to win, she might have to lose everything she held dear. The night was thick with silence, a heavy stillness that spoke of storms yet to come. Evelyn stood on the rooftop overlooking the city she had fought to reclaim, every light below a flicker of hope or decay. Marcus Gray awaited her, the architect of her pain, the puppeteer behind every betrayal. Their final meeting was inevitable, a collision of fury and fate that would decide who would rise from the ashes and who would be consumed by them. The path here had been lined with blood, sacrifice, and shattered dreams. Evelyn's hands trembled not with fear, but with a fierce determination sharpened by loss. The line between vengeance and justice blurred, but in this moment it no longer mattered. In the shadows of the city's heart, words were weapons as sharp as knives. Their whispered conversation revealed the depths of corruption and the cost of power. Evelyn faced a choice: strike with cold finality or find a sliver of mercy within the rage. As dawn crept over the horizon, the final whisper passed between them, a breath held between past wounds and uncertain futures. The city woke to a fragile peace, its streets scarred but unbroken. Evelyn stood amidst the ruins of a battle that had reshaped everything the empire of Marcus Grey shattered. Yet the shadows he had cast lingered still. Victory carried its own weight, a heavy cloak woven from sorrow and silence. The faces of those lost flickered at the edges of her mind, like ghosts refusing to fade. Evelyn knew the world she fought to change was not healed, only altered. Her revenge had burned away the false facades and exposed the rot beneath, but it had also consumed parts of her she could never reclaim. In the quiet aftermath, she grappled with the cost of her crusade, what she had become, what she had forsaken. The city breathed again, wary and uncertain, but alive. Evelyn moved forward, a solitary figure walking through the dawn, carrying the scars and whispers of a shadowed past. The darkness may never fully fade, but neither would her resolve to make it yield to light, however faint and fragile it might be. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like and subscribe for the next one.